There was a period when youth culture in film felt strangely artificial. Teenagers spoke in perfect dialogue, rebellion looked rehearsed, and suburban life appeared cleaner than it ever really was. Independent cinema existed, but much of youth storytelling still followed familiar emotional rules. Then, during the 1990s, a different visual language began to emerge, one that felt less like watching a movie and more like witnessing someone else's life unfold without permission. This is the story of how Harmony Korine helped reshape the way teenagers were seen on screen, and how his work quietly influenced the raw, documentary-style storytelling that would define an entire generation. Youth films before the mid-1990s often framed teenagers through adult expectations. Even when stories explored rebellion or struggle, they were usually presented with clear structure and moral direction. Independent filmmakers were starting to push back against that tradition, but the mainstream image of adolescence still leaned toward fantasy rather than reality. At the same time, video cameras were becoming cheaper. Skate culture was growing, and underground art scenes were expanding. Young creators began experimenting with looser storytelling styles that blurred fiction and observation. And within that shift, a teenager from Nashville would find his way into cinema almost by accident. Harmony Korine first gained attention as the writer of Kids, a film released in 1995 that followed a loose, drifting portrait of urban teenagers. Rather than building toward a traditional narrative climax, the film moved through conversations, streets, and everyday moments with an unsettling calmness. The characters did not behave like typical movie teenagers. They felt unpredictable, flawed, and sometimes uncomfortable to watch. What made Kids stand out was not just its subject matter, but its refusal to explain itself. Scenes unfold without heavy judgment or emotional guidance. The camera observes instead of instructs. For some viewers, this felt honest. For others, it felt confrontational. Either way, it changed expectations about what youth cinema could look like. Korine's first major directing project, Gummo, pushed this approach even further. Rather than telling a single story, the film exists as a collection of fragments. Suburban homes, quiet streets, and brief interactions blend into something closer to memory than narrative. The town feels suspended in time, shaped by boredom, loneliness, and strange rituals that never fully resolve. Unlike traditional coming-of-age stories, Gummo does not offer transformation or closure. It presents adolescence as something messy and unfinished. The visual style reflects that idea. Grainy images, unconventional framing, and long stretches of silence create an atmosphere that feels almost documentary-like. Viewers are not guided toward meaning. They are left to sit inside it. Korine continued experimenting with this boundary between fiction and reality in Julian Donkey Boy, a film that embraced improvisation and raw visual texture. The camera moves close to its subjects, often uncomfortably so, creating a sense of intimacy that felt new at the time. Instead of polished cinematography, the film leans into imperfection, reinforcing the idea that emotional truth can exist inside chaos. Over time, Korine's style evolved. Films like Spring Breakers introduced brighter colors and hypnotic repetition, shifting from muted suburban realism to a surreal vision of modern youth culture. Yet even within that neon world, the themes remained familiar. Teenagers searching for identity, performance blending with authenticity, the line between freedom and emptiness becoming harder to define. As social media reshaped how young people presented themselves, Korine's later work began to feel strangely prophetic. His characters exist inside environments saturated with images, where identity is constantly performed for an invisible audience. The chaos that once felt underground now mirrors the hyper-visibility of modern teenage life. The impact of Korine's early films can be seen in the way teenagers are portrayed today. Many contemporary documentaries and indie dramas avoid clear moral framing. choosing instead to observe young people with a quieter, more ambiguous lens. Awkward pauses, naturalistic dialogue, and lo-fi visuals have become part of a broader creative language. What once felt controversial now feels familiar. Of course, this shift raises questions about authenticity. When raw aesthetics become popular, do they lose their meaning? Kareem's films were never simply messy for the sake of appearance. They were carefully constructed to feel unpredictable, balancing spontaneity with intention. That balance is difficult to replicate, and it is part of why his work continues to stand apart from the wave of lo-fi storytelling that followed. Harmony Korine did not create the idea of realistic youth cinema on his own, but he helped push it into a space where discomfort and beauty could exist side by side. His early work challenged audiences to look at teenagers without the safety of traditional storytelling, while his later films explored how youth identity evolves inside a media-saturated world. I am obviously not a teenager growing up in the environments Korine depicts, and I would never claim to fully understand those experiences just by watching his films, but I don't think you need that perspective to recognize what his work introduced. He captured a version of adolescence that felt unfinished and uncertain, and in doing so, helped redefine what authenticity could look like on screen. Korine didn't fix the way teenagers are portrayed in film entirely, but he opened a door that many filmmakers and creators continue to walk through today. And sometimes changing the direction of storytelling begins with simply pointing the camera somewhere no one expected it to go. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe and drop a kind comment below. My Instagram and TikTok are linked in the description if you want to follow along there. See you in the next one.